to send it to Ban and to the other. So let me go back to Virgil. He's a Roman poet, and he was a great admirer of Homer. No wonder, we've seen how much it is, And the emperor at that time was Augustus. Augustus is the same emperor who was ruling Palestine when Jesus was born. So we are at the break of what the historians did with the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire has been divided into BC and AD. It is not the Romans who did that. It is the historians later in the 15th, 16th century who decided that there is before and after based on Christianity. Now, however, Augustus is the dividing line. Augustus is the ruler of the empire at that time. And Augustus, called Virgil and asked him, do we have a national epic? Do we have a poem for us, the Italians, the Romans, like the Greeks have the Iliad and the Odyssey? And he said, no. He said, go and write one for us. Go and write an epic for us that would be for the Italians what the Iliad and the Odyssey are for the Greeks. So this was a commission he had. He was commissioned to do that. And he went, now how much of it is true and how much of it is fantasy and how much of it is mythology and how much of it is history remains to be contested. But what the Virgil wanted to do was to create this national epic, and what he wanted to do was to show that the Greeks are in one way continued through the Romans, but not the Greeks of Agamemnon and of Achilles, but the Trojans. So in fact, he wants to show that the Trojan line continued and became Italy. Not the Greeks, which are now still in Greece, but the Trojans who are conquered by and the fall of Troy. So when he started writing, he took the idea of the Iliad and the Odyssey, and this became his template. This became his way of writing. So he wrote the Aeneid, and if you look at it, the first 6 books are very much like the Odyssey. And the last 6 books are very much about the Iliad. He starts the first line, this is a tale of arms, which means of war, and of a man, which means the hero. Look at the name, Odysseus, Odyssey, Aeneas, Aeneid. So again, we're playing on the names. So the Odyssey is the story, the Iliad is the story of the Greeks laying siege of Troy for 9 years. It's a story of war. The Odyssey is the story of Odysseus returning from Troy back home. The Aeneas is the story of Aeneid leaving Troy, going to a new home because his home has been destroyed. Now, who is Aeneas? Who is he in the Trojan family? Yeah, but what is he related to in the Trojan? Is he actually Priam, the king of Troy, had Hector as his son, who was killed by Achilles. He has Paris, who eloped with Helen. Paris is the one who, kidnapped Helen and started the war. He had a daughter called Creusa, who is the wife of Aeneas. So Aeneas is the son-in-law of the family. He is the Trojan son-in-law, Sahr al-Aila, He is the only one that is left after the 2 sons die. Actually, they will be killed in the battle. One of them died before. So when Troy has collapsed and the Trojan horse comes in, you know the story of the Trojan horse. The Trojan horse was built as a trick, but as a peace treaty. You have to be very careful nowadays. Sometimes, actually yesterday, I think one of the reporters was talking about a ceasefire in Gaza. And somebody said, I hope it's not a Trojan horse. In other words, I hope the ceasefire will not be a kind of a camouflage for an underground attack in a different way. So the Trojan horse is used now very much as this trick that even in computers, hackers use the Trojan horse as virus, spreading on computers, So at midnight they opened the doors and they left the horse in. It was filled with soldiers. And when everybody was sleeping at night, the soldiers came out of this horse and burnt down the city. So the city of Troy is in flames, in fire. And here comes Aeneas, who takes his wife Creusa, and he has a young boy whose name is Astyanax, and he will become a Julius at the end. And he has his father. And I want to mention here the very important concept of the Romans for the father, the pater. You find this very dominant in the Roman culture. It's a bit patriarchal, because the picture that we have running away from Troy is Aeneas carrying his father on his back, the old man, and his son in his hand. So three men of three generations running away. The wife is following behind with the suitcases, she's running away. And behind him, there are beautiful paintings. If I find one of them, I'll show you of these. Behind them is Troy in flames. Now, as they run away, as they get out of it, on the way, they lose the wife. They lose Creusa. He turns back to see where she is, and he can't find her. So actually, she dies in Troy. And then after many, many days, when they reach somewhere and he sleeps, he sees her as a ghost, and she tells him, I could not go and die in a foreign land. I had to die in my own land. But you go, find a new wife, but take care of our son, start a new kingdom, and continue the Trojan line. So in a way, he has the blessing of his wife to go and fall in love and find another woman and whatever. So some of the values that we have of the Romans that you mentioned, one of them is the concept of destiny, which is fatum, fate. Fatum, not fatuma. Some people call, fatum is, what does it mean for the Romans? The Romans used to believe that when you were born, the gods gave you a paper, a scroll, like the Roman papers you open, and on it would be your destiny. The Greeks were a little bit more gentle. They thought that when you were born, the gods would give you a few fortune cookies. You pick one. So you have your moira is your lot, your lotto. You pick the number. You win, you lose, it's another issue. But you pick the number. But with the Romans, you are picking one number. There is no other number. So there is this very strong concept of fate. Now, how do you deal with this fate determines what kind of a person you are. If you accept your fate and you go along with it in suffering and perseverance, as you mentioned, and never giving up, you are a good, dutiful human being. If you go against it and you rebel against it and you try to not follow it, you become an Epicurean type of a person who is rejecting the gods, and you will suffer for that. So it was a different perspective. Now, you mentioned the gods, but we didn't realize how these gods are exactly like the Greek gods. So, if the concept of father was very important, what did the Romans do? They took Zeus, added to it pater, and it became Jupiter. So Jupiter is none other but Zeus pater. It is a mixture of Zeus, of the Greeks, and the father. Juno is the wife Hera. Aphrodite becomes Venus. So all these gods are the same. Poseidon is Neptune. Hermes is Mercury. Apollo remains Apollo. Now, who was the main god who was fighting Yes.
These are names of planets.
Of what?
Venus, Neptune, Neptune.
Yes, but the Roman gods were based on the planet, on the solar system, or the planets were named after them, if you want to. These were the, yeah.
This side is for the Romans.
These are the Romans, yeah. Maybe they're mixed a bit because Juno is Hera, Zeus is Hera, and Juno. I have to reverse them, but the ones on the right are the Roman ones, except for Juno and Hera. Now, why is Juno in this book is exactly like Poseidon in the Odyssey? You know what Poseidon did to Odysseus, right? Now, this is exact. Now, why did Juno not like the Trojans? Juno, when she was Hera for the Greeks, asked Paris, the guy who eloped with Helen, who is the greatest goddess of all? I, Juno, I, Hera, Athena, wisdom, or Aphrodite, love? Now, somebody who's run away with a woman, you know, what do you think he's going to say? Wisdom?
No.
Marriage?
Venus.
Love. So he opted for love. So Hera got very upset, and she put a curse on the Trojans all throughout. So in this book,
This is why she was angry.
in this book, she is going to act exactly like Poseidon acted in the Odyssey. Every time she sees Aeneas, in fact, she is the one who is going to push. Juno actually represents, or Hera, marriage. She's the wife of Zeus. But Zeus had children everywhere and was sleeping everywhere, and she was always a problem with the wife who wants to keep the family and the legal kind of marriage and so forth. Aphrodite is love. Aphrodite is Venus, fertility, love, Ishtar, the same kind of concept, you know. So we are going to see how she, and at the end of the book will end exactly like the Odyssey started. The Odyssey started with the gods meeting and deciding, let us put the end to this Odyssean tragedy, right? Let us stop the suffering. The book ends at the very end with the gods meeting and saying, let us make peace, because if you want to have peace on earth, you have to have peace in heaven. Otherwise, you will not have. So if the gods agree together, then the humans may eventually come to war. So what is basically, you talked about the book. I'm not going to go through the summaries. The one that we will concentrate most on is the tragedy of Dido or Elisar, which is book 4, and the visit to the underworld. And again, you know, because it's a patriarchal society, it's the father who is in the underworld here. The father dies on the way. So Aeneas will go and see him. Whereas in the Odyssey, it was the mother who was in the underworld. He went and saw her down there. So these are the main pieces. You know, I want to talk a little bit about these Roman virtues. You mentioned the word pietas. We use the word piety very much today. When you say somebody is pious, we mean he's a good religious person. You know, you have piety, they say. But for the Romans, piety was, as you mentioned, duty to the gods, duty to the family, duty to the nation. So in fact, you have these 3 circles, if you want, to the gods. You do what is right to the gods. You do what is right to your kingdom, to your society, and you do what is right to your family. If you are doing these things right, then you will find that next to your name, Virgil puts dutiful, duty-bound, respectable, pious. And if you don't do these things, you are categorized maybe as an Epicurean, and they will tell you foolish, passionate, fiery. There is even certain places where Turnus is fighting. Maybe you didn't understand a little bit what happened, is that after they leave Troy, maybe I should go back a little bit here. After they leave Troy, on the way they sail, they arrive to the island, or to Carthage. Carthage in Phoenician means Ur Hadith, which means a new city. The kaf or qaf is al-ta'rif. So Ur Hadith is the new city. So Dido leaves Sur, goes all the way to the northern part of Africa and starts a new kingdom or a new city, which is Qartaja. And she is alone. She runs away because when her father died, who was king, he left the kingdom for her and her brother together to rule. Very modern. The brother decided to kill his sister and get rid of her. So she hears about it and runs away. She takes all her people who are very close to her, very honest, very loyal. She takes all her Phoenician beautiful violet purple clothes. When we go to the museum, we'll see how they used to make this, the purple urjuan from Sur. And she starts this new kingdom. Now, here is a queen, alone, with no children, building a new city. And here is a prince who comes with no wife and a child who has lost his own kingdom. So they are, she dies on the way, the wife. So here we are in this Carthage where they're going both to meet. Yeah, yes.
Was the who created their own kingdom? Was the queen?
Dido. Dido or Elisar, okay? That's the one we use. Dido is the one they use in this here. But it is also mentioned as Elisar in certain places. So here, look at this perfect setting. A man has lost his kingdom. A woman has lost her kingdom. They are building a new kingdom together. So it's a perfect setting for them to fall in love and to stay there and, live happily ever after, right? But the gods have decided that Aeneas has to go and found Rome, or Virgil has decided, in his book. So we're going to see now what happens in book 4, how they fall in love, how there is tragedy that's going to happen, and where do you think he got inspired, this Virgil, from this? Who was where? Gilgamesh, Virgil never read Gilgamesh because it wasn't discovered yet. Gilgamesh was discovered in the end of 19th century, yeah? Calypso, Odysseus, but something also in the Roman history of a Oriental queen who fell in love with a Roman general, Antony and Cleopatra. Antony and Cleopatra is the picture that he had in mind, and Cleopatra killed herself at the end, and so did Dido. She killed herself at the end, yeah. She will kill herself when he leaves her, and he goes away, she kills herself. So, I just will go through these Roman virtues and then let you go because it is time. So duty is very important. The concept of dignity is something that was very important for the Roman culture. And this is something that we will find that has continued even in our modern times. The first article of the Human Rights says all human beings are born equal and free in dignity and rights. So no matter who you are, what you are, where you're born, what is your class, dignity or your self-honor or your self-respect is equivalent in all people. You cannot just fight like that. Constanza or I will go through these Roman virtues next time, but just remember that Virgil is a very stoic philosopher. In other words, he wants to show us that duty is the one that is to be chosen, unlike Lucretius. But on the other hand, we have episodes here which are very much of the Lucretius type. Falling in love, forget duty, make love not war, abandon your heritage, and so forth. So we'll continue with this, and then we will also do the Lucretius. So I'll see you on Thursday. Please be on time so that we don't waste too much time, and we can go on with our readings. Okay?